Public Safety Committee meeting. I'm Councilmember Mitchell Englander. I want to thank you all for being here today and welcome my colleagues, Monica Rodriguez, as Mitchell Farrell. So we have a quorum, colleagues, and with that, we're going to go ahead and go into public comment first. General public comment. Oh, wasn't on? Oh, we got some fake names on there. Okay. We have, I don't see Wayne Spindler. He's not here, so go ahead and take his name off. He's been called. And we have Mr. Jean, not here. Ms. Tina, is there a Tina here? No? Mr. Overland, also not here. So my guess is that these were probably fake names submitted by one of the gadflies who was escorted out moments ago for interrupting this meeting and the conversations. So we'll go ahead and take those names off. We have no other folks here that wish to speak on any of the items, so we'll close public comment and general public comment for the meeting and move on to the agenda. Colleagues, I'd like to move items 2, 3, and 5 on consent. All right, without objection, that'll be the order, and we'll go ahead and hear items 1 and 2. So we can start off with 1 and 4. We'll start off with item 1. Thank you. Wanted to make sure that was a test and make sure y'all paying attention. All right.
Good morning, committee members. Joshua Drake from CLA's office. Before you, a report in response to a motion directing our office to report on various issues related to fireworks with the assistance of police, fire, and the city attorney. Report provides some recommendations for dealing with some fireworks issues and provides data that was requested on calls for service throughout the city on fireworks and enforcement issues. It does highlight that using uniformed police officers for fireworks enforcement doesn't generally get you good results because by the time the police officers show up, whoever's been lighting fireworks off in the street is usually gone. Another issue with enforcement is once the department seizes any fireworks, they have to turn it over to the state fire marshal's office. And the state fire marshal's office is chronically underfunded in fireworks destruction. So one of our recommendations is supporting state legislation or administrative action to ensure the state fire marshal receives adequate funding for that. The report also provides quantitative data on fireworks calls by area station. And you see calls throughout the city for fireworks, but they're more prevalent last year in Mission, Southwest, North Hollywood, Foothill, and Hollenbeck. And the report also provides information on the number of fires caused by fireworks, which the absolute number's pretty small, but it should be noted they all happen about July 4th every year. And it talks about educational strategies and outreach efforts, which police and fire are working with MySafe LA on that, and they can discuss in further detail. If you have any questions, we're here to answer them.
Okay. Thank you, Joshua. Thanks, Mr. Chair. This is an initiative and motion that I introduced some time ago after a meeting with the State Fire Marshal in Sacramento in September and really getting a much better understanding of the breadth of the challenges that we have from the state level in relation to fireworks that have really become bombs and explosives that really aren't necessarily fireworks that are proliferating throughout the city and the state, actually. And so I asked for this report. I look forward to hearing from the fire department on this report. We learned a whole lot about what the state of California is up against in terms of the bombs that they confiscate and how in the state of California there is no site to neutralize them or to dispose of them. When fireworks or these bombs, and there is really a proliferation of uncertified, I'll call them fireworks, from Southeast Asia and from outside our own borders, coming in as never before, and oftentimes they're controlled by the gangs. It was a real eye-opener meeting with the fire marshal. And there's a lack of adequate funding from the state. It depends on the kindness of the state legislature to appropriate funding every year through their budget approvals at the state on if they're going to allocate funding to ship the fireworks away. And there are a couple of sites that they go to. Louisiana by train, or Utah by train, or is it Nevada? It might be Nevada. No, I think it's Utah. Anyway, we'll hear more about that possibly in the report. What I had noticed is, and I'm not alone, in the last few years, there has been such an increase in illegal fireworks and M80s and bombs going off on the 4th of July and the weeks leading up to the 4th of July. And it's also getting worse around New Year's. And so we have to take a look at what's possible. We can possibly do at the local level to get some level of control in our neighborhoods to control these explosives, and then on a dual track, lobby the state on allocating more funding and see how we can approach this before more people get injured or someone gets killed. And so that really was the primary goal of this. I live in Glassell Park in a neighborhood that historically has seen fireworks every year, but last year you couldn't breathe because of the sulfur in the air. Car alarms were going off all night long, and it was like being in Beirut in circa 1985 in Glassell Park on my street. It was crazy. So that was just anecdotal, but then I've learned that it's a problem, an increasing problem in most cities across the entire state. So I want to daylight this whole thing and see where we can go. And we're up against a lot, and I realize that. So what I'd like to do is hear from the fire department and My Safe LA and the police department about the challenges that you face and some ideas that you have that we can employ as soon as we possibly can leading up to this 4th of July.
Robert Nelson, Homeland Security, and been elected as the anti-fireworks commander for the year anyway. Shortly after 4th of July last year, we got together internally with our department because we realized that fireworks touches a lot of areas within the fire department. The Fire Prevention Bureau, the arson section, certainly Homeland Security, our CERT folks, a community liaison officer with the messaging. So we've got a lot of our folks together, and we had a discussion about what we're going to do for the following year. So this actually started, 9 or 10 months ago. Some of our objectives look at our current policies and are they within reason? Do they address the current issues that we're dealing with? And we reviewed those, looking to our outreach partners, how we're looking at that. We actually had to conduct a survey of all of our fire stations. Are they putting up banners appropriately 30 days prior to 4th of July? Do we have posters that go out and things that we're doing for our outreach for our Fire Prevention Bureau and when we go to community meetings? We realized that some of our stuff was probably out of date. Was our website up to date with respect to fireworks messaging? So we partnered with MySafe LA, and MySafe LA has been very diligent. They're probably up to the version 7 of our banner, so we've had a complete redesign of our banner. We've got a common messaging. We've worked with LAPD in the sense that we want to make sure that they're on the same page with us. We've brought in LA County Fire. We want to make sure that there's a common messaging across the spectrum with on dealing with fireworks, the safety message that we want, and that they go to a public venue and not to take, use these illegal fireworks in their communities. I think we've reached that point. We're working with our PSOs and our CLO office to make sure that our website's up to date and that they're doing a PSA announcement for the public and we're bringing in the LAPD's police chief and the fire chief. And my Safe LA, Dave Baird, will actually speak a little bit more about he's taken that initiative head on. We want to make sure that we believe that it's largely a messaging issue and that we get that message out there. So we're looking even at putting some information on park benches or billboard signs, anything that we can do to get the message out there that these are illegal, they're not, it's not safe, and that there's going to be, some adverse consequences to lighting off fireworks in our neighborhoods. I think we've done a lot in the last few months, and I believe that we're close to going to print, so we're going to be printing up our banners and getting those out. We'll work the logistics out with the PD and with our department. Dave Barrett from My Safe LA will have banners or have some posters printed up. We want to make sure that we bring in LA County Fire. We've been having ongoing discussions with them that they're mirroring our exact same message. The information that we put out, we want to bring in the LA County Sheriffs. Hopefully we can bring them on board so that everyone, the large agencies, are kind of sharing the same message. They're going to have there's not going to be different information. They want to all have the common messaging and common places where they can go. Because some of our folks don't realize if they're in the city or the county, and we want to make sure that we are sharing that information concurrently with all of our folks. That's all I have at the moment.
That's great. Yeah, please.
Yes, sir. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. George Rodriguez from Operations Valley Bureau. As the fire chief mentioned, enforcement for us becomes very, very difficult. As you can see from the sheer volume of calls that we get, it almost becomes prohibitive. Not only that, but these calls are very low grade, and by the time our officers get to them, a lot of times what we get is a bunch of debris. So enforcement, it's although something that can be done, is somewhat impractical, and we do agree that we do need to take a focus and an emphasis on the education campaign. One of the things that we currently have going right now, as you see in the report, the number of calls that each area received, we're breaking those down, and we're getting on the calls dispatched where there's a physical address. Our senior lead officers are going to those residences, and they're doing door knocks. Not only are they providing them with a letter letting them know that location is one that's been identified as one where fireworks were reported in the past, but we're also providing them with the literature that we are going to get provided, hopefully, Fire and My Safe LA, so that way they can have the information on not only the dangers of fireworks, but also where the public shows are. I know that out in the valley, for instance, we have at least 3 major sites that we usually direct folks to that get well attended. So that is going to be a continued emphasis. Our senior leads will be reaching out to you folks as well to leverage the news media and your social media sites. Our intent and goal is to blanket the city, blanket the information out as much as possible so that this education campaign goes ahead. As the fire chief stated, the collection of the fireworks is an issue. I was just speaking to the bomb squad here. We've got many fireworks that are stored that we really can't get rid of because of the budgetary issues and other information that's already been highlighted. So we like to get away from that enforcement piece as much as we have to. Of course, as we have to, we will. But I think that it's more in the education phase that we're going to be able to make an impact and be a little bit better off.
That's a great point. It seems like we don't have much choice because the lawlessness is so widespread that if I was a first responder, I would want to just hunker down in a safe place. Retreat. Totally, because really you would be so outnumbered by the sheer volume of the illegal use of these, I'll call them bombs. And so I think that a public outreach, if we can compel peer pressure on blocks. I know a lot of residents feel intimidated by a neighbor down the street who's shooting off M80s or whatever, and so that's an issue. So I like the idea that you've identified problem sites, and there must be hundreds. and
Thousands.
Okay, just in the city of LA.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, so that gives you a sense of the breadth of the challenges
Correct.
that we face. One thing that I wanted to ask about, and it might have been you, sir, Mr. Nelson, who talked about, it might have been Riverside County. It was you, yeah. David. So where they actually will pick a site that's known for just complete anarchy on the 4th of July and just put a helicopter and have it hover with lights shining down for a few hours or an hour just to kind of suppress activity and maybe swoop in and make some arrests. I kind of like that idea, just as a test case to see what's possible, because I don't know how many arrests are made from this activity leading up and on the 4th of July. I imagine not too many arrests are made because of the magnitude of the issue, but it seems that if we could target some specific sites, go in and disrupt them on the spot in real time, and way in advance just exert peer pressure on all of the blocks to get neighbors to rat one another out, for lack of a better description. I'd be the first one to support that.
So on the arrest front, Councilman, one of the things that we do in our undercover vice units, they scour the internet looking for individuals that are advertising those type of fireworks for sale. What we do target are the large warehouses or the businesses that are selling these illegal type fireworks, or any fireworks for that matter, in the city of LA, because they're all illegal. And that's where most of our arrests come in, and the enforcement piece comes in. I know that last year there were quite a few that were made, and a lot of them were highlighted in the news, and that's usually where the focus and targets are. On the 4th of July or the days leading up to, as far as the actual usage, which a lot of the time in the neighborhoods is unfortunate, but a large majority are the safe and sane that are sold at other cities. And we have families that are, and kids, the ones that are doing that, unbeknownst to the dangers. And I just want to highlight, as a matter of fact, and looking at the report, you see that 2 out of the 4 cities that have the highest level of fireworks use, being Northeast Division and Hollenbeck, are right next to Alhambra.
I'm in Northeast Division, so
Right next to Alhambra. And Alhambra is a city that does sell the safe and sane fireworks. So not knowing whether they're in the city or the county, like the fire chief said, a lot of our citizens do go right next door. They buy the fireworks, they come to their house, and Lord and behold, they have their own fireworks show in their front lawn. So that is a problem that perhaps, I don't know if an outreach can be done to Alhambra, if there's anything that can be done, because they're right next to our fire hills and, that dry brush that we have in the Northeast and Hollenbeck areas.
I think it's time for us to contact the city of Alhambra and see if they will
help out.
Kind of join the club and maybe prohibit the sale of fireworks in that city. I know that we can't do a blanket county. The county can't just dictate
at least the neighboring
city by
cities.
city by city. Lastly, what do you know? One of the most disturbing thing I heard when I was in Sacramento was that the gangs are getting in on the game. What do you know about that?
We're not seeing that at all, Councilman.
You're not?
No. In fact, a lot of the large seizures that we have made in the past have all been businesses that have ties to the Far East, China, Mexico. So there's stuff that's coming in illegally, as you alluded to earlier. What we see on the streets, the safe and sane type fireworks, which is a majority, those are all family members, kids that just happen to drive by a city where the fireworks are sold. They see the kiosk and I remember as a kid that being one of your fantasies. And that's usually what we see out on the streets. We're not really seeing that gang involvement for financial gain or any of that. So we don't see that.
Not so much an issue here then. Okay,
No.
Terrific, thank you. I'll bet Mr. Barrett has something to say.
Well, as the education partner for these agencies, we tried to, starting last June, break down the issues into distribution and use and awareness. There's a couple of copies of the design graphics that are being shared this year. And there's three issues that extend beyond enforcement and radio calls and 911 responses from fire. There's a cultural issue, right? There's a large group of people who believe it's a right to be able to do this. There are other people who feel that it's a power opportunity. And so the whole objective after collaboration across here is to make sure that we're working on getting the word out that the city of Los Angeles knows about this and is starting to take some action. And I think that's the most important thing in the CLA report that can help stabilize the messaging, right? So if we have the same message and it's reaching at the different levels, right? So there will be a banner in front of every police station and in front of every fire station, not just for the 4th of July, but starting in early June and going through the end of July, so that this message is seen wherever you drive around the city. There will be posters that are in every LAUSD elementary school. We will be posting them in rec and park facilities. There will be flyers, which you don't yet have on there, in English and Spanish on the same document, so front and back, that explain the dangers, why there are dangers, and how to go find a show. Everyone will be directed to, we want people to not just have random websites to go to, so we're going to direct them to lafd.org, to mysafela.org, and within those websites there will be consistent messaging about what the law is, how it works, and so on. And all of the available shows will be highlighted. In our site there will actually be a map, so you can actually put in your zip code or look for yourself, and you'll be able to go right down the street, hopefully. We're also going to LA Unified Schools. It's testing time and near the end of the school year, so everyone's kind of anxious. The students are, but we've got probably 25 schools set up right now, and we hope to get to 50. There are several in your district, and there are several in Monica's district, and I think one or two in Councilmember Englander's district, and one in Councilmember Buscaino's. Our government affairs liaison will be sharing all that information next week with you. If you want a representative to go or whatever, we will be bringing SLOs. We will be bringing first-in fire companies. We will bring city attorney prosecutors. And the idea is not to scare these kids, but to redirect them. We also have bumper stickers. The bumper stickers will be handed out at events. We hope to have 10,000 distributed in these key areas. So Northeast, Hollenbeck are two key areas. We also have San Pedro is an area that we're very concerned with. So we want to make certain that people can put these on their cars or on their notebooks or on their mailbox, whatever they want to do to kind of say, I'm not for this. I think it's an easy, non-threatening, non-adversarial way to simply make a statement. And we will then follow up with another public survey that we conduct in late July that gets people's reactions to this so that we can then take the next step planning for next year. Our relationship with the LA City Attorney's Office has been really terrific. The last thing I'll mention is that there is going to be a PSA. It'll be available for, two things. One, these materials we're negotiating with billboard companies, bus signs on the side of buses, and bus benches to have them available throughout the city. So we see this messaging over and over again. Before we decided to do this, we studied Pasadena and the city of Riverside. Pasadena, there is a very, very low fireworks issue, but you can't move 10 feet without seeing a sign that says it's illegal. I mean, it is a blanket-wide city initiative. Last year in Riverside, Riverside is one of our partners, and they saw a 40% drop when they started using airships. It's expensive. So it's not something that we can automatically say, oh, we'll put airships up.
But the helicopters are out anyway, so why not select one site and just do floodlights?
Well, that's above my pay grade. But outside of
The challenge comes, Councilman, as their ability to respond to actual calls of emergency or pursuits or anything else that's going on. It really eliminates. We generally have one helicopter flying over the city of LA, sometimes two, depending on the availability of the officers. Mm-hmm. But that would be an idea that as large as the city of LA is and spread out, it would be a challenge. Mm-hmm. But it can be done, barring that there are no calls for service on that day, emergency.
Well, there will be 1,000 or more calls for fireworks, so they'll be just running around like a headless chicken all night.
Correct.
Probably.
And then the final thing that I wanted to add is that we are producing a PSA. Mm-hmm. It'll be provided to Channel 7 and Channel 11, mm-hmm. Channel 35, and then digital versions to every council office. Mm-hmm. It features Mayor Garcetti, the fire chief, Deputy Chief Cato from LAPD, and it's a very simple message that fireworks are illegal and go see a show, leave fireworks to the pros. And that'll be available in about 10 days.
That all sounds great, and just I'll leave you with this. When I was a teenager and going through driver's ed, they showed graphic videos of like headless bodies and people who had died in terrible crashes, and it was traumatizing, but I never, ever didn't wear a seatbelt. So what about scaring young people and showing photos of hands missing and eyeballs missing?
Our school presentations have that.
So that these young people realize there are real consequences and real dangers. It's not just fun and games.
Our school presentations include disturbing photography to help dissuade kids, including, I can tell you, an incident in LA in 2010. In South Los Angeles, a couple of young men decided that they were going to have a cannon that they had found, and they were going to shoot off a cannon. So they stuffed it with wet with gunpowder and wet toilet paper. And as you know, that's a recipe for not anything else than a bomb. And as you might expect, the cannon blew up. It killed one of the young men, and it blew the hands off of the other young man. And as he was being loaded into the ambulance, the medic, who I personally spoke to, said that this young man said, "That was awesome." So there is kind of a mindset that we have to penetrate and get through. But we're working to do that. And I think the most important thing, as a closing statement for me, unless you have questions, is that we're not going to just go out and educate everyone with these various materials and activities. We're going to track it. We're going to get the numbers together, and we want to come back and report through the proper channels that say, this is what we learned from this experience, so it can become part of a building process that leads to zero use.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. O'Farrell, for your line of questioning. And I'm happy to see this come forward to our Public Safety Committee, and knowing that the harbor area is one of the top 5 areas that, on the number of calls generated every 4th of July, leading up to the 4th, following the 4th. I appreciate, and this is, I think, anything helps here on this outreach, on community engagement. Really appreciate you identifying the deliverables, classroom presentations, PSAs, pamphlets, bumper stickers. But in my days working the streets, I've worked numerous 4th of July evenings, and I can speak on behalf of those working patrol on that night. It's overwhelming, clearly. Yeah. We're undermanned. I don't see us winning the war on illegal fireworks as much as we're doing today, unless we bring in the National Guard, maybe pull them out of the border and come to the city of LA. But one of the commanders, you made it clear that when you have neighboring jurisdictions and neighboring cities selling safe and sane, quote unquote, safe and sane fireworks, it's very difficult to control that unless we ask the state legislature to ban all safe and sane fireworks in the state of California. Otherwise, you're going to have, families. I don't think, my kids, 14, my son's 14, my daughter's 11, they've never held a sparkler. They've never lit off a Piccolo Pete. I don't know, Monica, remember those days? Remember the Piccolo Petes? But we're seeing this rocket's red glare. It's like a mini Disneyland fireworks show in the harbor area. And I feel that in the harbor it's a community divided. You have a group of residents who really celebrate our independence and go above and beyond and find their way toward getting these illegal fireworks. And then the other half of the community and the residents who say enough is enough. They go down to Cabrillo Beach and witness the amazing fireworks show that we pride ourselves on each and every year. But I appreciate the effort. I'm a little skeptical on addressing this citywide issue leading up to the 4th, the day of the 4th, and following the 4th. And just know, these are misdemeanor crimes. Officers, and talking to the chair here, reminded me that officers have to witness an individual lighting off these safe and sane fireworks, unless neighbors make a citizen's arrest. How many citizens' arrests have we had?
Zero.
Okay, so again, it's, if the residents really demand change and want to see this happening, and want to see a reduction of illegal fireworks, they have to step up and make a citizen's arrest on their neighbor that they have to see each and every day. So I also applaud the fact that our officers, our detectives, have made critical arrests and seizing hundreds of pounds, if not thousands of pounds of illegal fireworks. The port of entry at the Port of Los Angeles, in the report is indicated, and remind yourself that some of these, most of these, if not all, come through our Port of Los Angeles. So, and I'll end this with this question. What are we doing in partnership with the Port PD as well as Customs to ensure that, these illegal fireworks are confiscated at the port of entry? Or are we?
As of right now, I'm not aware of anything that we're doing. It's a great idea. I know that in the past, that conversation has been made, and one of the constant themes that we received was the the challenge of the lack of resources and inspectors that they have to thwart that. I know that we were working heavily with San Bernardino and Riverside because a lot of these fireworks are coming through Nevada, through Laughlin, and that was the common response that we received, is that they didn't have the number of inspectors available to interdict that type of activity that was coming in. So, but that is a great idea. That is something that we can do, reach out and see if there's something that they can step up in their inspections during that period of time, because we do know that all the large fireworks, the truly dangerous ones, are being imported in from other countries.
And then, Leslie, is there a way to incentivize folks come forward to turn individuals in? Is there a monetary reward? Have we ever considered that? If not, maybe we can consider a monetary reward to get folks motivated to turn these knuckleheads in?
Any kind of motivation always helps. I mean, I'm sure we'll always welcome that. Obviously, that'll be a discussion for your body, and if there's something that's available, I'm sure that through the WeTip hotline or the MySafe LA or the fire department, I'm sure those tips will be able to come in, and we'll be able to take action accordingly.
Mr. Chair, what's the action here? I'm just wondering if we can get a report back on the feasibility of a reward system for turning individuals in.
We could do that. That would be under a separate motion.
Okay.
To entertain, so we can actually have it, because it's entirely different than what's before us, but certainly if somebody wants to put in a motion on that, we could certainly bring that back to committee for discussion.
Thank you for all your hard work. Really appreciate that.
To tag along with what Mr. Buscaino said, what about involving the AQMD, the air quality? I mean, I have a friend who has severe asthma who has to leave on the 4th of July. She actually vacates her home.
So two
Just
quick
throwing
comments
things
related
out there.
to that, perhaps, that might be helpful. One, our office has spoken to Operations South Bureau of LAFD, and Chief Villanueva is planning a meeting to talk about what might be possible, working with LAPD South Bureau and the Port Police. That hasn't happened yet, but he's aware of it, and he's said that he's going to move forward on that.
Okay.
The second point being that they're safe and sane fireworks, but that they don't fly and they don't explode the way that others do that Councilmember O'Farrell's talking about. It's a completely separate layer, and that's where the really severe legal issues arrive.
Okay?
Air quality. It's an air quality issue, too.
Yes, Ms. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. O'Farrell, for bringing this forward. I know it's one of the issues. If you look at the numbers, Mission area is the highest and obviously the most fire-prone, given that we've tested that in the last handful of months. But one of the things I just wanted to recommend, I mean, first of all, the fact that the fire marshal is underfunded, I keep hearing about a state surplus that is rather significant. So the idea that the state fire marshal doesn't have sufficient resources, to me, is just a whole other conversation. But in terms of the disposition of some of those higher grade items that have been confiscated, have we looked to perhaps some of the professional pyrotechnic groups, if they have any interest in the acquisition or distribution of some of those materials? Just, I mean, the safe and sane, obviously, that's a lower grade, but when you talked about the higher grade, if there was any interest among several, I know many of us fund a number of public fireworks shows, and if we've ever considered going to some of the professional ones, because I mean the quality and the level of some of these explosives are professional grade. From what I gather, I couldn't decipher the difference between the two. So just in terms of an option, I would maybe perhaps look at seeing if there's any of the professional entities that would be interested in receiving any of these.
Great point. We have not looked into that. In fact, I have the lieutenant here from Hazardous Material, the Bomb Squad, as well. We'll look into it and see if that's something that's possible, and if they're interested, we'll be more than happy to get rid of them.
Yeah, I mean, and, you know, again, I know we have two professional productions. I know Mr. Englander in his district has a huge professional show that Church, what is it?
Biggest one in the city.
The big, well, in the San Fernando Valley, it's huge.
Yeah.
it's hard to tell which one is actually associated with yours and which ones are on the street in my district or across the valley. But yeah, I'm just as an option for the disposition of those. But again, anything that I can do to be helpful. I know Mission Area has done a really great job of piloting certain programs to help curtail the activity. Given the fire-prone nature of my district, I'm certainly interested in doing all that we can to help mitigate and suppress this activity. But thank you all for your collective efforts on this. It's really appreciated.
Thank you.
That's crazy. All right, well, thank you all for this incredibly timely and important discussion. I appreciate it. So we'll go ahead and receive and file the report. A lot of recommendations.
No, Mr. Engler.
Oh, did you have a recommendation on?
I recommend to approve the recommendations in the CLA report.
Oh, okay, yeah.
With an added instruction.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'd like to approve the recommendations in the CLA report with the instruction for the LAPD, all parties essentially, LAFD, assistance from the CLA, and CAO to identify and apply for any grant funding opportunities to address illegal firework use in the city.
All right.
Councilmember O'Farrell, I manage the grant section. Typically, UWASC and SHISHCAP are only terrorism-related issues. We'd have to look for a public safety grant that we will look into. We have not currently applied for that, and I'll have my grant folks look into that possibility. Typically, most things are in the Homeland Security terrorism-related field.
I think
it's not beyond the possibility.
For clarification, I think the councilman's suggesting that the mayor's office look at possible grants, since they head up the grant unit for the entire city. So it may not be directly public safety, but it could be education and outreach, other types of community grants that could be used for that purpose. So I don't think he's limiting it to public safety and fire department. It was my understanding.
Right, just any.
So any and all available grants. So since that falls under the mayor's office, it'll be requests, not an instruction, but a request for them to look into that.
It could also be additional funding for more robust public service announcements and outreach.
Right, sure.
And then Mr. Buscaino's, was that a separate motion, Mr. Chair, that Mr. Buscaino mentioned in terms of a reward?
That would have to be brought in as a motion.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one last thing for Councilmember O'Farrell, we do public education outreach that we do with our community liaison officer and Peter Sanders, who's sitting behind me, and we bring in the Grossman Burn Center, and we actually do show photos of people that have experienced injuries in the past, and it's pretty graphic, but it's one of those opportunities to mention what you said, to get that word out there that these are dangerous. They do demonstrations, they blow up watermelons and a few other things.
You don't forget things like that, especially when you're younger. You don't forget those images.
So that's something that we do closer to the 4th of July, just so it resonates in folks' head, and just to let you know that that is going to occur.
Great.
Okay. All right, then we'll take those action items, and we'll go ahead and move as amended, and that's approved. Without objection, that'll be the order. Thank you very much. Now we'll go ahead and jump over to item 4. Mr. Previn, you're disrupting this meeting. Please sit down. No, you can't go to the ropes and talk to the clerk. No, Mr. Previn, no, the clerk is working. Excuse me, sir, you have to sit down. You're disrupting this meeting. If you're going to continue to disrupt this meeting, you're going to be asked to leave. So you can go to the back if you want to, but you can't stand up in the front here. Sorry. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go to item 4 now, please.
Item number 4 is a report from the Los Angeles Police Department relative to the department-sponsored youth programs.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, great. Thank you very much. I know this has been a work in progress, and this really, without going back into the incident that occurred in June and revisiting what happened there, I'm sure we'll get into a little bit. But this is one that I have been very focused on and eager to get to this committee in terms of the process in our youth programs within the Los Angeles Police Department. Overall, I want to open up by saying we've had tens of thousands of youth that have come through various programs over many, many years, decades, and it's grown with tremendous success with the Cadets, Jeopardy, our PALS programs, and many others. And with that, there's, from my knowledge, have been very few incidents. Having said that, one incident is one too many. In this one in particular, it was beyond what somebody can call an incident. It was shocking. And the fact that it would be under the color of authority and to have these types of relations with youth, not only youth, but at-risk youth in our most coveted program. That it was what I think everybody, not only within the department, but the public and the media were outraged over. And we all know that it only takes one officer to do one bad thing. And it's always going to happen within law enforcement. There's always going to be an officer. There's always going to be a bad apple. There's always going to be a sworn personnel that's going to do something really, really bad. And it's one of the worst things that we have to deal with as public officials and as officers ourselves. And Joe and I have talked about this, as we both wear a badge as well. And it's hurtful individually, but it's hurtful as a city and as an agency when officers do bad things. There's an officer, as we all know, just last week that was in a horrific DUI and killed 3 people. There will never be a time where there aren't good people that do bad things and wear a badge and took an oath and don't get into trouble and don't cross that line. This crossed lines beyond those types of incidents because it had to do with children. And it wasn't just that, but it was it's an organizational program that really put in jeopardy and a question the morals of the entire department and the ethics and the rules. And so here we are today, not to discuss the incident, but to talk about all the updated work that's been done, the rules that are now in place, knowing full well it's trying to close loopholes, but at the end of the day, it's really about an individual officer and making sure they're making proper decisions, and we can't create rules to say don't break these laws and harm individuals as under the color of authority. There is no such thing. There's no rule. There's nothing we could possibly do here today or that hasn't been already done. We shouldn't need and shouldn't have to have written instruction to an officer that says you cannot have sexual relations with a youth in our cadet programs. That's insane. That's unspoken. That is something that you don't have to take an oath for. You just follow not only the law, but the moral conduct of being a human being. But unfortunately, there are a lot of sick and demented people in society, and sometimes they actually also wear a badge. It's just not a reflection on the other 9,999 officers that also wear a badge. And so I think it's important. So I know the rules and the guidelines here are not just meant to try and ensure additional protections. They're also meant, from my perspective, meant to give at least the ability and the to restore faith, particularly to the parents, that their children are being well protected, and that it creates oversight and transparency and an opportunity for dialogue and input from parents and everybody within or that touches this program or any of the youth programs. So with that, if you can just walk us through and give us an outline of where we're at on the policies. And I know there are various policies.
Absolutely, yes. Good morning. Thank you for having us. So I'm Ruby Flores, Commanding Officer of Community Policing and Policy Group, and to my left is our youth programs OIC, Detective 3, Mike Bland.
Good morning.
So he actually has done a tremendous amount of work on a daily basis with this program, but when it came down to dealing with this incident, Mike really was, I think, the guy that led the charge and had a lot of insight and put pen to paper. So much of the policy and the positive changes to create a more effective program, I have to commend Mike for, because he took a tremendous amount of time and personal, his passion definitely has shown through in this. So I'm proud to sit next to him and present along with him. Sir, just if I could address your sentiments about the gravity of this situation, there's no doubt in my mind that each and every officer was affected by this and feel the same as what you just expressed. And there's so much pride in this department, in the badges that we wear, that when this did happen, I tell you, there was a lot of officers that were disgusted, upset, thought that we should disband the cadet program altogether. I think a lot of people were so frustrated because it was so egregious. But you're right, it was one officer out of the many things that we do for these kids in these programs. I think we have done a lot to impact the families. We can give you so many anecdotal stories about the good things that the families have told us. When, as a result of this incident, there were several cadet posts that were stood down, disbanded for a time being. And that kind of resonated citywide. So all the other cadet posts, parents were coming to the officers and to myself in tears for fear that their cadet program at their respective area post was going to be shut down. And they were worried that, now what am I going to do with my kid, with my child, because they look so much to this program for their kids. And so it did affect, the community as well as the officers. And those are some things that we looked at. I think we can take pride in seeing how quickly the department acted with a sense of urgency, with a sense of accountability at that point in time, but putting measures in place for future accountability so that there was no chance or any room for error for any other type of incident to occur. Much of the changes we made in terms of policy and rules and things, and yeah, we did put things in paper on pen to paper, like don't communicate with youth off duty on your personal cell phone. And I know we're all thinking, why would you have to even put that in writing? Well, we know why, because that one person will inevitably take advantage of that. But I think it just goes to say that the rules and the messaging has been very consistent and very firm in stating that there's no room for error, that the cadet program and the officers that are selected to run these programs, our youth service officers, are the best officers. They should be highly scrutinized. We did look at some things in terms of the selection of our YSOs, and we're holding our commanding officers directly responsible for ensuring that they're receiving the proper training that we've implemented, and that they're directly involved in the selection of the youth service officers. And that's how important that position is. It's something that we're looking at every day. So let me just, some of the changes that we have made that we've put into writing is the youth manual update. There's also a rigorous inspection schedule that has been put out. We're doing internal inspections, but also our audit division is going to come in also and follow up with further inspections as well.
May I add, just on the auditing section, the department has assigned a police performance auditor to my unit to help in the development of this auditing and inspection schedule, which I think demonstrates how important this is to continue to go out and make sure that I's are dotted and T's are crossed so that everybody understands that the little things, if we don't take care of the little record keeping and who's active and who's not active, can make the big endeavors fall apart. And just to add with the guidelines as well, I want to echo everything that you said as well, but I believe with the standardized guidelines and the rules that we have in place that were created immediately, they've really, or my belief is that people thrive in structure, and you can see this program now thriving even further than it was as an overwhelmingly successful program. But through these guidelines, we've now created this structure. And some of the feedback that we received from a variety of assessment tools that were created immediately was this disparity or changes or not standardization across the city, and I think that's helped out a lot.
All right. Oh, thank you. I have a few questions I want to jump into as well, and I'll turn it over to my colleagues after that. We also understand that, and I think it's important to highlight this, and it wasn't mentioned, that the officer in question on this particular incident was not assigned.
Correct.
He was not a youth officer. He was not assigned to the cadet program. And so any rules we create for officers that are assigned, and I think it's really important to mention that, this was simply, and I want to put simply, an officer that was working in a division. That was it. Wasn't on loan with the program, wasn't working with the program, just happened to be working at a particular division where there were some of the cadets also stationed at that and working out of that as cadets.
He wasn't a YSO.
He was not a YSO.
No, he was just a front desk.
He was a front desk officer. And so we can't regulate and we can't create policies and regulate stupidity. We can't regulate ignorance for ethics. We can't regulate, especially, we have enough time on society as it is. We can't regulate our way out of, protecting people from just evil people. Anybody that would harm or touch a child, and this is exactly what that was, in my view as a father, is an evil person, period. And you can't regulate evil. And so here we are creating rules and regulations that we need to have in place, no doubt. With that, one of the things that's mentioned is that there was a full evaluation for restrictions in communications, and you mentioned some of that in access to vehicles and equipment. Have we actually updated the kit room policies, where officers no longer leave shop keys, for example, on the counter when the kit room officer isn't there? Because that was always the norm, and which is, to me, is fine, because we never had a problem. But now we had a problem. So have we made those kinds of changes to the
Yes, sir.
kit room?
Glad you asked that. So two things. So it has been dealt with from the Office of Operations, from the Assistant Chief all the way down to the commanding officers, through inspections, and the day of the incident, inspections were conducted after that and on a consistent basis. I was just at direct reports meeting yesterday with all the assistant chiefs and deputy chiefs, and that was a topic of discussion again, to continue to monitor and look at that in terms of equipment being left out. Some of the two things that were done to address that was, number one, that the YSOs and everyone in the station, everyone working in the station is instructed that the cadets are not allowed to wander or access any part of the station without being supervised. They're not to be assigned to the kit room. They're not to be assigned to other areas of the station that ordinarily
I don't think we've ever had youth assigned to a kit room, but my question is they're walking by a kit room, and the kit room door is shut,
Right.
and there's...
So that was the first
Okay,
part of it.
got it.
Because there have been some things that have come out where cadets were doing job duties that they probably should not have been
I
assigned
see.
to.
Got it. Okay.
The other part of it was that the kit system, which is the tracking system, that has been updated and modified. There was a department-wide inspection of all equipment that is assigned through kits. So your shotguns, your tasers, your keys, every piece of equipment that is barcoded. There was a full inspection and accountability of those, and that continues on a daily basis. The watch commander's log was modified I remember when I was at Hollenbeck back then, there would be spot checks and inspections, not only by the CDO, but by the bureau chiefs, by audit division. So
I have a quick question on that,
addressed.
and I know it's doing a deeper dive, but just a quick question on that. Would it be possible for our KIT software to automatically, when an officer goes into watch, it automatically ties in and alerts the watch commander after so much time? So maybe it's a 2-hour or 4-hour window that they get a trigger or an alert or an email. By the way, Officer Buscaino was checked out of shop and a taser. He's into watch 4 hours ago. It hasn't been turned back in.
Yes, sir, that does exist. And that email goes to the watch commander and their immediate supervisor and their commanding officer.
So we're now doing that.
That has been in place, yeah.
Okay.
That's been in place.
So they're now paying attention to the email.
Correct.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's only certain persons that are assigned to the kit room that have access to the kit system as well.
Okay, next few questions are getting into the top-down. There was, as of the date of this report anyway, there were a number of recommendations made. There were a number of recommendations completed. There were a number of recommendations that are in progress. The ones that are in progress, is there any updates, like item 5, accidental injury or death insurance, liability insurance for youth program-related activities? Those are in progress. There's a number of other recommendations under the Office of Inspector General for the things that are also in progress, to convene a working group to examine the boosters' role in the cadet program, to develop specific post-academy curriculum, to examine alternative providers for enhanced cadet insurance. So are those things still in progress?
Yes, sir, they are. So the department's report number 5 corresponds with the Office of Inspector General's recommendation number 12, both with insurance. What we notice is currently with our cadet program, we're utilizing the Mayor's Office of Volunteers, the insurance through the Mayor's Office, and currently that insurance, through conversations with the CAO risk manager, that insurance covers our cadets when they're either training to become volunteers or learning how to be a volunteer or carrying out volunteer duties on behalf of the department or the city. It does not cover them currently for social recreational activities. So if we have a dance, we go for a hike, they twist an ankle, that supplementary insurance does not kick in. And so that was something that we discussed. And we have waivers that the YSOs or youth services officers have the kids sign with their parents before they go on social recreational activities. But we wanted to find a more robust type insurance to be a protection for these families, because I know that some families may not be able to afford the insurance, and we don't want that to be some sort of challenge for them or hardship in terms of signing their kids up for our program. So we were in discussions with the CAO's office. We need to sit back down with them and see if we can purchase some more robust insurance for this program that covers those additional activities that really make our program thrive. It's those social recreational activities where these kids have some fun.
The work group to examine the boosters' role?
To be honest with you, just timing right now with coming through a cadet academy, report backs, we just have not had a chance to sit down and convene that, but it's something that's important to us. And the same with the post-academy curriculum. Very similar to our roll call training that we give to officers, just creating some sort of curriculum that once a month, a cadet post that we know all cadet posts are going to talk about with their kids. So whether I develop something about leadership or a cadet code of conduct referral, every month we would have something, 1 or 2 things that we would ask all of our cadet posts, our 28 posts, to discuss, and that's something that I need to evaluate and work with my staff.
Have you looped the training division into that?
Absolutely. Training division and Dr. Luann Pinal are very involved with our program, whether it's helping us develop that, which we've talked about, as well as the training for our YSOs that we've been doing at our monthly meetings.
Got it.
Correct. So again, the CAO's office with insurance is under review.
Academy curriculum is in review.
Yes, so academy, correct.
Okay. And then lastly, I want to get into, so while that's on cadets and Jeopardy for the most part, PALS is totally different and unique.
Correct.
And, of all the PALs, I think we've got 12 PAL programs out of our 21 divisions now. And most of them have their own bylaws that are all a little different. Most of them have set up their own independent nonprofits. and operate. One or two of them have their own actual structures and buildings, and with the largest being of that one, Devonshire PALS, obviously. And looking at that, I know it was sort of, okay, it is a youth program. It's more of a partnership than a PD program. That's where it's unique. That's where I see it. It's not housed. Some of them are actually in divisions, but some of them are more of a partnership at a sort of an arm's length, but have officers assigned. And so it is very different, and I see that every one of those items is still a work in progress. And therefore, also and I think there were some inconsistencies with the PAL report that wasn't completely accurate, which is what I want to do a deeper dive on. And for example, just looking at Devonshire, it listed that there were roughly 175 to 200 enrolled in the program. There's about 2,000, so it's way off. I know there's a walkthrough, I think, once, but not a lot of extensive interview. And a lot of what came out of from my read of the PALS program, it referred to, you shall sort of do everything that's in the cadet and Jeopardy manual, but then here are some added things because you're unique. But there are some areas that conflict with each other dramatically. There are also some places and spaces I think we need to work together on in terms of access to going, and as you mentioned earlier, one of the key components of these youth programs is also many of the field trips and the off-site opportunities that, we have. For example, some of the PAL programs go up and use the YMCA camps, and it says that they shall have only certain types of supervisors there, but that doesn't exist and would eliminate that opportunity. So there's some allowances that have to be made and some different types of things that are a little more flexible. So what I'm going to suggest then is that we bifurcate this and pull the PALS program out and establish a working group. I'd be happy to be part of that too, but I'll put that together. My suggestion would be that it be comprised of, at a minimum, the department to lead it. I'm willing to host, but the department to lead. The three largest PAL organizations, which would be Hollenbeck, Hollywood, and Devonshire, the directors of those three. And anybody else the department feels risk management may be a good body to be part of those discussions. But I think we need to do it very, very quickly. I also think that we should suspend anything that's a reasonable request from any of the PALs, whether it's captains to have authority to override or coming up with a system quickly, because summer programs are coming and it shuts them down. This policy, the way the conflicts are actually written, shut down the PAL programs for the summer, many of the opportunities that exist because of it. And so the recommendation out of this committee then will be to stick to the bylaws we have, to stick to the criminal backgrounds and the inspections that we already have in place, those rules for all supervision, which weren't being done by many of the PALs volunteers. We understand that. Put the working group together as quickly as possible so we can bring that back in here with a new policy to adopt. And then move this whole thing to council, and then we'll come back with a department PALS manual, if you will. That would be my recommendation, and I want to get your input on that.
I welcome a working group, and I welcome being able to get input from all the PAL programs, because I know there are unique situations, especially dealing with a large group of kids, such as at Hollenbeck. My goal the goal of the department is to make sure that we're mitigating any risk for the kids and to the department. That was the primary focus and the intent of the modifications made in the manual. Mm-hmm. I would be okay with entertaining any exceptions that come along or requests for exceptions to the proposed guidelines that have already been approved and in place. I hear you, though. We do need to act swiftly as we're coming up on the summer months very quickly. But if there were any questions or modifications that need to be immediately addressed where there would need to be an exception that would be made, then I would entertain that specifically from the commanding officer of the respective PAL program.
I think we should do it this way, do it a little differently. And let's try to streamline it and not call it a working group. There are too many conflicts. I've read through it, the entire manual, and having been involved directly in PALs for so many years, I can tell you it just doesn't, there's too many things that just don't work. I also don't feel that there was enough communication with the PALs organizations. Quite frankly, they were really overlooked in the way in drafting a lot of this. With the focus and the main emphasis because of the cadet program, I get it. I'm not looking to, I understand why, and also because they're all so different. You know, you can sort of group cadets and say, okay, they're all the same, we're going to operate them all the same, period. Done. It's a department program. But the ones that it's a partnership, and many of those are unique. I've already received many phone calls from different PAL programs and boards of directors and saying this really shuts us down. And I see why. And so rather than calling it a working group, why don't I just suggest that it'll be the recommendation from this committee to again, bifurcate the PALS policy, set that aside until we can come back. And I'd have a special meeting, we'll do it right away, and get a conversation going, and input from the three largest PAL organizations. And as soon as that conversation, and it's probably going to take more than one conversation, but to sit down and have an actual conversation, come back with those recommendations to the department. So it'll be whoever you guys can assign, as well as, I'm assuming the two of you at a minimum, and perhaps risk management, to work with those three and come back with a follow-up report. We'll hear it right away. But I think that we just have to set it aside because we have thousands of kids that we're going to lose a lot of opportunities. And again, they've been operational for decades without this. So don't think it's going to be much of a setback. And I'd hate to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I don't want to hold up the policies as they've been already approved from commission, and we really want to get this to council to codify it. So that would be my recommendation. I'd like to get input from my colleagues now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's pretty unfortunate that we're having this discussion, clearly. My first day in the police academy, my DI officer Wilson ingrained in myself and my recruits to never ever abuse your power under the color of authority. And the actions of this one officer, a poor decision that was made, it took advantage of these kids. I think moving forward, as much as it is unfortunate, and he should be and will be held accountable, will make our department stronger because we've had some lessons learned. The other thing they told me, I'll never forget, is never, ever tarnish that badge. And it's disgusting of what this officer did to these kids, and I'm pleased with what's before us, and to want to recognize the chairman for your leadership on this and calling to the table this issue. Also to Commander Flores, who we've done great work together in the past. And Detective, thank you so much for your commitment to this. The cadet program top to bottom review, I had a chance to digest it as well. I appreciate the effort being made. My question, and I called one of the recruits that I mentored, and I valued this program. This cadet program is one of the best, if not the best, in the country. We have other agencies coming to see the impacts and the effectiveness of the cadet program. So on my way in, I'll tell you, I called one of the cadets that I mentored, Ed Grijalva, and Ed today is a police officer out of Wilshire, and I even asked them, did you ever feel uncomfortable as a cadet? He goes, not once. And indeed, the officers, the YSOs, clearly indicated to him and his colleagues in the cadet program that if indeed they ever feel uncomfortable, if they ever had any issues of inappropriate behavior from another youth program participant or supervisor, he was told to come forward. So Ed's just one of thousands of cadets that have come through our program. And by the way, he's trying to get to the harbor. He wants to come back to the harbor, just for the record. He's on the waiting list. I love that kid. But nonetheless, on you had an opportunity to survey the youth participants, correct? What was the sample size, about 1,500?
We have not surveyed the youth participants. We interacted with them.
Didn't you give them a questionnaire?
No, a questionnaire went out to all the areas as part of the assessment to see how operations were being handled at those areas. We did a full inspection at last year's June 24th graduation at the direction of Chief Beck, where we brought 1,500 kids that were there in attendance at the Galen Center, and they were all inspected and heard a message from Chief Beck about his expectations. But we have not surveyed the kids.
And after that inspection, did any of the cadets come forward expressing, that they were treated improperly or felt uncomfortable in the program?
So that's my mistake. Every kid met with the commanding officer with their family. So every active cadet met with the commanding officer at their respective cadet post, and during that time, those questions were asked. Number one, how do you feel about the program? Do you have any information
So they were
regarding this
questioned.
investigation?
Each cadet came
Correct.
and met with their CO.
With their parents.
Got it.
Correct.
And what was the response to that?
For me, overwhelmingly positive from everything that I heard. And I mean, tears, please don't shut this down. You have no idea what this program does for my kids and for our family. And,
Sure.
and that was largely what we got back from these families.
Got it. Can you share with us, did anyone come forward and said, this officer treat me uncomfortably, or this cadet was not fair?
Not from my understanding, sir.
So again, it's good conversation we have in light of today's Denim Day in the city of Los Angeles and the entire month of sexual harassment prevention. And it's fitting that we have this discussion here before us. And I do, again, want to recognize the youth programs. It's something that I valued as a police officer and mentored a lot of kids who today are wearing that badge that they understand should not and will not be tarnished. So appreciate the response in light of what took place in 77. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Rodriguez, maybe?
No, I just thank you for your work. I highly value the work of our youth service officers and the cadet programs. I feel the ones in my district in particular, I have one housed at Pacoima City Hall, and it's certainly of incredible value as someone who was highly involved in establishing the fire academy programs for the fire department side. There's just a standard code of conduct that I think is part of wearing that badge, whether you're a youth service officer or not. And it's unfortunate that the behavior of...
Excuse me, Mr. Previn, either have a seat or step out of the room. You're disrupting this meeting.
It's unfortunate that the behavior of this one particular individual has really caused this, but I thank you for, really reflecting on where we might have opportunities for improvement. And again, I can't say enough about the youth service officers. It takes a level of commitment among these officers are particularly very special in how they provide mentorship and guidance to a lot of the youth in our community. So I just, I don't want to put them through any additional, they put in a lot of work, and I really value and respect them, particularly those stationed out of Foothill and Mission area. I think we've got the best, so I'm pretty proud of them.
I don't know about that.
Oh, bring it, Joe. But again, thank you. Thank you for your work on that.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support your recommendations and the seriousness with which you approach this issue. And to Detective Bland and Commander Flores, great job on your comprehensive response to this. I know how incredibly demoralizing this incident was for the force. But on the flip side, I know how incredibly successful the cadet program is, how essential it is for the neighborhoods in the 13th District. And to see the proud, young, optimistic faces of the cadets in the program every time I'm at an event, and their proud families that watch on, I've seen firsthand how the cadet program has enabled struggling families to rise up and transcend incredible difficulties that they have within their own family dynamics. So I've seen firsthand the incredible benefit this is.
I will.
So I feel that the safeguards you've put into place are very thorough, very well thought out, and I get the feeling that you've addressed the specific issues. One is authorization that is specific to when police officers interact with cadets and the authorized personnel to interact with cadets and no other personnel, and then access to the police department resources as it relates to officer use only. Those seem to be the two big sort of safeguards that have been addressed and will be addressed, and especially with this working group. I am very optimistic that there will be, you'll cure any of the possible, loopholes down the road that allowed this really one-off incident to occur, as tragic as it is. And I'm sure the cadet program will be better than it's ever been. So well done, and thank you.
I think just to mention, Chief Beck was quick to set the tone when he put out video messaging, and we had sit-down meetings with officers and their sergeants and commanding officers, and then at the cadet graduation where he really told us that we're all youth services officers, that we all need to see something and say something, and that was a tone-setting message from him, that we're all youth services officers. But I just wanted to share a quick story that came to me last Friday. We're preparing for the end of our 15-week Cadet Leadership Academy, and we'll graduate next Saturday at the Galen Center. And a family from Rampart Division, the mother called one of our YSOs at Rampart Division and said that, 2 of her kids are about to graduate, and her parents in Mexico got quick visas so that they can come here because they're so proud about their child graduating from the LAPD cadet program, and the mother hasn't seen her parents in 21 years. Wow. So that's the value of our program and what it can do. So it's just really wonderful stuff.
That's really great.
Let me just add real quick to that. Chief Beck did more than that.
Absolutely.
He did something I've never seen in the history of the Los Angeles Police Department. He actually put on his uniform and his gun and his badge, and he went and arrested the officer personally in the station. That has never been done. And it was done symbolically. It was done to send a message. It was done for every right reason. It was done to show pride and honor in the department. But I will tell you, it was the one thing and Chief Beck will be leaving soon in his retirement. It's an image that should be forever ingrained within this department and the culture of this department, that the chief of police put on his own uniform to arrest one of his own, to send a message of how wrong that was. And he stood up and he made the department proud by doing that. So I want to recognize that too. Joe, you had something else?
I did, but what a great way to end the committee. I just want to understand, and Mr. O'Farrell kind of reminded me of this, anonymous reporting. Is that happening today? Do the cadets have an opportunity to anonymously report a time where they're feeling harassed by either a cadet or a supervisor?
Absolutely.
They do. Yeah, they do. They're advised of the formal channels to do so through their YSOs, but also the anonymity is always discussed.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so just to wrap up the recommendations, there will be 2. One is we're going to move the whole package with the exception of the PALS portion of it. We're going to hold that in committee. And the department will then work with the 3 PALS programs. I'd be happy to join in that. And then that report will then, and the recommendations and the new PALS policy will come back as soon as we possibly can, so we can get that working. And we'll suspend those policy objectives and guidelines to PALS until we can get that established. The second one is and I want to find out how quickly we can get this on the council. I want to move this as quickly as possible. If we can put a request to the council president's office to get this scheduled for council as quickly as possible. And then the second is to ask that all the outstanding items, if the ones that are still pending and work in progress, if they can come back to this committee with an update in 90 days, just to let us know where you're at. So anything that are the work in progress, that would be great.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then finally, I want to thank you. I know this was Herculean in trying to get your arms around, and you've done a great job.
Thank you.
Anybody that's touched these documents have really done a great job, and it's a good work product, and it's been a lot of work, so truly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much, sir.
Then that'll be the order without objection. That's the vote. That concludes this meeting, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.